The hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews. It's your number one source. Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Episode 274 of Sports Card Nation. Have two guests today, not one. What's better than one guest? Two guests. Cousin Oz, Cousin Tony of Cousins Collectibles podcast. I almost said formally. I'm not going to say formally because I know they've put their podcast on pause. I'll just say that way. I'm hoping they grab the mics once again. But they grabbed the mics once again for this episode. So for that, I'm thankful. And we're going to talk about current events. We're going to talk about kind of their decision to put their podcast on hiatus and all that stuff. So, and we're going to talk about content creation, the hobby, what's next, and all that good stuff. We're going to talk about, the elephant in the room, if you will. Rob Gerard and Megabidding and some of the fallout and how it affects, one person's actions can, we don't think about it all the time like that, but one person's actions can affect other people that are affiliated or around you. So we'll weigh in on that as well. So with that being said, let's get this show started.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
Excited anytime I have the next two gentlemen on the podcast. I've gotten to know them fairly well enough to call them friends, and happy to have them on. We're going to talk about something I'm not necessarily excited about, but get their perspectives on it. Tony and Oz from Cousins, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mr. John Newman. Thank you for having us on. We kind of hung up the mics, but we're back for, to see, if we can give our perspective as to why we did what we did. So we appreciate you reaching out to us and bringing us on. So we're going to try to, give the best perspective we can as to what went down and where we're at in our collecting journeys. But man, listen, I just want to say I call you Big John Stud for a reason. That intro that you have is always epic. You always go above and beyond. So you're the man, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Tony, any first words before we get
Yeah. So again, thank you for having us. This is the our version of the Coach K farewell tour. I think we're going to try to milk this as much as we can to get on as many podcasts as we can and just talk our stuff.
But see, that way you're not hanging up the mic.
Yeah.
You're just using them on other people.
Exactly.
The mics are still there. They're not hung up.
We don't have to prepare anything. We just show up. Now it's not work.
Yeah, that's fun most of the time, as long as you like who you're talking to. Like you guys alluded to, you recently announced on the show that at least I'll call it a hiatus. I like to say never say never. It's not my line, but we've heard it before. When I heard the show and heard that, I from someone who does it, I'd be lying if I said I didn't understand it a little. I know what this entails and how it works and how we can feel certain days. But from a selfish point of view, I was sad and disappointed because I enjoy your show. I've said that to you many times. How you do things is different than a lot of the shows that we do have. So from a selfish point of view, and I know I probably speak for a lot of other people too, not necessarily what you wanted to hear coming out of your car stereo speakers when I heard it. And so you guys know this. You're welcome on the show anytime, whether you're not doing your show, you're doing your show, you bring the show back. But I definitely reached out to you to, say congratulations on a great run and, have you on. Let's talk about this because I think it's important, right? So I guess that'll be really the lead-in question here is talk about that process and how you guys came to ultimately that decision to kind of put the mics down, at least for now.
Yeah, for me, it just kind of became a grind. We've been doing this for 2 years nonstop. Sometimes some weeks it was like 3-4 times we were recording, and it was a lot, but I mean, the hobby was on fire. Everything was great. We were willing to put in that sacrifice just because, we're into this. We're collectors. We've always been collectors. So we wanted to really chronicle our journey and really, just try to put our spin on things. There were some things we agreed with, some things we didn't. So it's like, why can't we go out there and put our opinion and say, yeah, that's cool, but, we really don't agree with this. And like I said, just put our story out there, our spin on it. And for 2 years, man, we were going hot and heavy. And I know a couple times, Tony and I, we normally would record. It had to change our recording schedule just because of work and life and things like that. So Sundays became every time we would record. So once Sunday rolls around, we're both scrambling, trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to talk about? And it's like, man, I have no idea. And it'd be like 30 minutes before the show, and we're scrambling, trying to think of topics. I'm like, dude, I got nothing, So then I'm going back through my old notes. I'm going on Instagram. I'm trying to get, Tony's doing the same thing. And it just became that grind. Like, dude, we kind of, he was like, dude, I got nothing, a couple weeks ago. And I was like, neither do I. And I said, let's just play hooky. Let's not say nothing. We just don't put out an episode, and nobody said anything. And I was just like, you know what? I think it's time, man. I think it's time. I really didn't. It felt like it didn't hurt me to miss doing that episode that week. So any other time, dude, I would be upset. Like, I'd be mad. Damn, we had a streak. We were, always on it. We never missed, and we were proud of that. And when we missed that one show, and it really didn't, do anything to me, I was like, man, I think it's time to hang it up. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah. And John, you mentioned that our show is a little different. Like I don't know if it's been on purpose, but we stay away from like hobby news stuff. So a lot of people do that. Like you guys have Hobby News Daily, like, what I mean? So it wasn't going to be Hobby News Daily Light or something like that. Yeah, I mean, we always look like for our own little path in the hobby. And we've both slowed down as far as making purchases. We don't set up at shows. So that's a big part of the hobby that a big aspect of the hobby that goes on that we frankly don't get into. I have no idea what the pulse of the dealers are because I'm not out there. I don't know what the customer, what that relationship is like between the dealer and the customer, because I'm usually just a customer. But so that's a big aspect of the show that we just don't talk about. It was always just about our journey, where we're at, what are we doing, what's we have next. And once you slow down, it's kind of like, yeah, we're just gonna go on the air and just kind of just piddle around and make no sense, waste the listeners' time and our time if nothing of quality is going to come out of it. Where before, when we're buying and transacting, we're able to talk about our experiences with dealers, our experience with trying to find deals, things like that. So I just thought about it. I'm like, man, I really don't want to waste the listeners' time. And that's kind of, maybe we did for a bunch of episodes, but we made you laugh along the way. So just when that happens and Oz says, like, when it becomes a grind and it's not fun anymore, then that's when it's time to hang it up. I mean, we've never made a cent off of the show. despite what people may think that podcasters are millionaires, that's very far from the truth. So it was just kind of that. And so like I said, maybe goodbye. I said on the show, maybe it's goodbye for now, maybe not forever. But so basically that was it. Once we started slowing down and we can talk about it, what we've learned along the way, that you don't have to be in the fast lane in the hobby. It's more, a hobby should be a slow burn, not, every day picking up things and moving things. For some people it is, and that's great. That's not how we went about it, because we kind of just, I would say we fill up the piggy bank and then we empty it out and then we fill it back up. So there was definitely a lot more stuff coming in than going out. So eventually you gotta save up the loot to make that happen if you're not going to be moving your cards. And we just don't move a lot of cards. Once they get here, they kind of stay here for quite some time. And I mean, Oz can tell you, he basically did like 20 or 30 50 cards. I don't know what it was for one. So once you do that, what are you going to do? You have to just hit the reset button again. So,
Guys, first off, I appreciate you here. People who listen to podcasts think, you just turn the mic on, talk for an hour, and that's it, and obviously the three of us know it's a little more than that, a lot more than that. And I know you guys, even from the Hobby Hotline days, you guys are attention to detail, even more than I am. And I think I am, but I think you trump me in that category for sure. So all the work, like I said, the research, right? Because when you talk about something, right, you want to be as factually correct as you can be. I know we've all been, we've all said something we thought was accurate, and it probably was maybe not exactly that. I know I have. I can speak for myself. So when we try to be, as close to accurate as we can be, and that's a lot of work. Again, I'm not trying to have a pity party for us. I'm just I want to be accurate. Because, even myself, before I got into podcasting, listening to the few that were in existence at the time, those guys made it seem easy, right? Oh, you can just talk. That's kind of how it even happened. I was right. We used to listen to Eric Norton in the Fat Packs podcast, me and my son, who was probably at the time 15, 16, 17. And he liked the show. And he's like, Dad, all the stuff you've done in the hobby, you should do a podcast. To even him, he made it like it was easy. Just turn on the mic. And it isn't. When you do it, you realize, but not even just research too, guys, editing, uploading, cutting stuff out to make it sound as clean and as nice as possible. And sharing, you got to put yourself out there. You got to share your personal experience. Some people are better at it than others. I'm pretty open, other than I don't like to discuss always price or how much money I made at it. I'll say the show was like very good, or this was one of my best shows ever. I don't like to give out dollar amounts for various reasons. Number one, people. And this is something you can kind of attest to. But sometimes certain people can root for other people. I try to be like that. And then you have a whole nother section of folks that, whether it's jealousy or they want to, wish it was them. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, but kind of get mad when someone else is doing good, all right, or good. And so I don't try to, if I have a great show, I'll talk about it, but in generic terms without throwing dollar signs around. And just cognizant that those folks are out there. And I don't care. They can be mad. There's nothing I can do about it. If it's not mad at me for saying that, they'll be mad at something else for something else. But I try to be conscious of that. Your take on that.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing. We've always been, Tony, like when we first started, it's easy to okay, we're going to start talking about the deals that we make, or if we did, we set up at a show a couple times, what are we going to put our prices at? And if we did sell, how much profit we make, how much detail are we going to get into? And Tony was always dead set. I don't want to get into the details. You know what I mean? It's just, if somebody wants to slide into the DMs after the show and really get into the nitty gritty, that's fine. But let's just talk about the experience, talk about, if we made money, we lost money, cool, but not really give the exact amounts of it. And, sometimes I was like, man, I really wanted to talk about it, because you would listen to other shows and they were just like, listen, this is just what it is. And this is the deal that I made. And I made $1,000 on this one. And and sometimes a lot of people were coming in and really, this was their first experience in the hobby. So they were listening to these podcasts to try to learn and to see exactly, how do I be successful, like what these guys are talking about. And, when you're talking in generic terms, like you said, sometimes people can be like, oh, you're just talking out your ass. You're not really giving me anything. You know what I mean? Like, I know that, obviously. I want to get the nitty gritty. I want to know how I walk up to somebody, how to approach them. If I got a card that's worth this amount of money, or if they have a card, how much should I ask for, and specific percentages, and, really get into those details. So some shows did that. We didn't really concentrate on that. But like I said, we always gave the opportunity, if somebody had questions, just to, on the down low, slide into the DMs, and we would, always chat it up and give all the details that way. But you never know who's listening. We're definitely not millionaires, but, we got some nice cars, we got nice collections. And, if we're dealing with people out there, people are getting our addresses, hey, let me send you something, blah, blah, blah. And if you're out there bragging that you got $1 million collection, hey, I know where Cousin Oz is rolling. Let's make a swing by. You know what I mean? You never know. And your family could be at risk and things like that. So when you put yourself out there as a persona in these podcasts, it's a catch-22. So we always chose to be, on just a non-specific when it came to the deals.
Yeah, pretty much. He pretty much nailed it, man. You never know. As fun as this hobby is, I'm always a little reluctant when people, that, hey, I want to send you something. I'm like, I appreciate it, but you just never know, man. You never know. So that's something, man, that's something that I learned, if you're out there listening and you're talking to people or transacting with people, you have no idea who anybody is. Let's be honest, man. They're just a name on Instagram, or whatever. You have no idea who this person is. So if you're giving out your address, you're talking specific numbers, things like that. Just, man, that can be a little tricky. So just a little heads up out there about that.
Listen, it's a great point, right? We see these store burglaries and break-ins, and at first they were happening after closing hours, and now people are getting more brazen. They're going in during openings and tying the guy or person in the store up, and you're dealing with money. Anytime there's money, I don't care what. It's not a hobby thing. It's a money thing. Anytime there's anything that can be made money, someone else may want to acquire it the not right way. And, my wife, even here, as being a dealer and more so being a bulk subber for SGC, when people's cards are back, they have to pick them up. I usually generally meet them at like a Dunkin' Donuts. My wife, like it's funny hearing you say that, Oz, because my wife's like, I don't want all these like people coming to the house and knowing that you have card, like they know you're a dealer. I don't want they shouldn't know where you live, God forbid, because they know you probably have quite the collection. And she's right. And then hearing you say it, Tony, for no doubt. So the only one that comes to my house are people I generally like really, really know. I can almost call them like family. I've known them 10, 12 years. I'm not worried about them. I even when my son was a little younger, and I used to tell him, like, don't tell kids in school, like, dad has this rookie card or this, you can say your dad's a card collector if it comes up, but just keep it in like generic terms, because I'm not, it may not even be his classmate, but what if like his classmate talks to someone else and like, there may be of ill repute, you know what I mean? Or someone they know. And then it's just, hey, where does this person live? I'm curious, it sounds goofy, but it's real. And
no, John, listen, we have a very good friend, Danny Torres. He's a Hall of Fame baseball writer. You know what I mean? He does the Talking 21 podcast. He deals with baseball celebrities and celebrities just in general. And he knows a lot of people. And the one day he was like, hey, listen, obviously I'm into Roberto Clemente. You guys are as well. I want to introduce you to my friend who's a huge Roberto Clemente collector. And I want to take you to his house He's like, but he has very specific rules, and he'll let you know when you get there. But one, what happens at this place stays at this place. We don't want anybody knowing anything. So when we got there, he invited us in before we even stepped down into the basement. He was like, listen, no pictures, no video. He's like, I'm not trying to be, a jerk or anything like that. It's just, you never know. I don't show this to a lot of people. So you guys are kind of lucky seeing this. And we walked in, it was literally a Roberto Clemente museum in his basement. And it was insane. So, but you have to respect the wishes of these people, and you realize and you understand, you know what I mean? It's like, you never know, even if you're in an affluent neighborhood or wherever you are, people could just come, and you never know what their intentions are. So,
yeah. And it just kind of makes sense, right? Just to avoid even the temptation or so, you got to be careful. There's just you're hearing too much about stuff like that. So I fully get that. At least he didn't Derek Jeter yet, make you put your phone in the basket before. He let you keep your phone. He just told you, I appreciate it if you don't take any pictures. That's an old Derek Jeter story. I don't know if you ever heard that, guys, but it was fortunate enough to go to his house, you had to put your phone in. Now, if I ever was invited to Derek Jeter's house, I'd have a dummy phone. And when he'd ask me to do like, hey, Newman, put your phone in the basket.
Yeah, you just get one of those glasses like Tony has with the camera in them, and just
Well, I put the fake phone in the basket while I still kept the real one on.
There you go.
But no, and you have to be careful. Just enjoy. And I've had, going back to like not giving actual sales figures out. I had someone once DM me after a show like that and said, Newman, what you make? I want to know. And I'm like, hey, man, like, how is this, going to affect your day when I tell you, like, and then my humor, I'm like, all right, man, what branch of the IRS do you work in? The jig is up. But I didn't tell him, because I really had no bearing on his day or, I just said I did very well. I might have said it was 4 figures. That's all, where 4 figures, let your mind, that's up to you.
And the thing is, John, a lot, the deal you specifically make is not going to be the same as what somebody else makes. Yeah. And the deal you make with that, you know what I mean? So it's like, you're never going to get the same thing depending on the dealer, depending on the card, depending on where you're at, depending on your relationship with that person. So it's cool to get those details. But if you're trying to say, oh man, okay, John had that card, he got that. All right, now that's the comp. Let me go to the show and be like, oh, I know of a comp. And then dealer look at you like you're crazy. That'll never happen.
Yeah.
So it's tough to try to, get that information and then use it. You kind of, this hobby's funny. It's just like you come in, you've been doing it your whole life, John, and we've been sporadic. We started out as kids, took a long hiatus, got back into it as adults, and then got hot and heavy about 2 years ago, obviously with the hype of the market, when everybody hopped in. So, it's just, you kind of got to play it by ear. You never really know. And you like this whole thing, what we were doing, it was almost like an education for us. And the main reason was like, listen, we really don't know what we're doing. We're doing our journey here and we're talking about it, but it's like, let's bring people on that actually know what the hell they're talking about. And then we can glean some information from them and actually, do some big things in this hobby. And you were the first person, I want to thank you, because you were the first person that actually had a podcast and was significant, in the hobby, that came onto our show and gave us a little bit of legitimacy and, was the springboard for what Cousins Collectibles became. And then, after that, we went to the National 2 years ago. You invited us to go on stage with you, which was huge for us. So, you've been there every step of the way. You were, when it comes to the Cousins Collectibles podcast, you've been there from the very beginning. And we from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for everything you've done. So when you asked us to come on here, it's like, of course, no brainer, so, but, our whole thing that was just learning, coming in and trying to just figure exactly how to work this hobby, to benefit yourself, because when you're dealing with money, you obviously want to get the best deal. You want to get the best cards out there, but you don't want to, go out there and pay top dollar for things. You want to learn the tricks, the ins and outs. And that's kind of like how we maneuvered this whole thing. And it got funny because a lot of people, once we got into it, a year, 2 years later, we would bring guests on and we would ask questions and try to get, information from them. And then we would have DMs be like, yo, enough of the guests. We just want to hear you guys. And it's like, yeah, but we only have so much information. We're still learning. So if we can bring somebody on here that's actually an expert, and has an expertise in a specific thing, why wouldn't you want to know about that? I know we're cool, we're fun, and and it's something to listen to, but sometimes you got to bring something of value, significance to help you guys as the listener as well as ourselves. So it was kind of funny after a while. People are like, we don't want guests, we just want to hear you.
Yeah, it's funny you say that.
Go ahead, Tony.
Oh, no, yeah, it's funny you say that. I was going to say that about the guests, but that's been the number one thing that I've learned or taken from the podcast is I'm a way better collector today than I was 2+ years ago. And it's because of the pod. Had I just been kind of, maybe I would have learned something from watching content, but I think like the podcast puts you in it. Like it really takes you to another level within the hobby. You have to kind of even get involved in the drama by osmosis. There's drama all the time in the hobby, and not that you want to get into it and but it's there, and you can learn from that. But yeah, man, I've learned eye appeal. I've learned, value, forget what the sticker, the number on the PSA label, so there's 7s that look better than 9s, there's 3s that look better than 6s, things like that I've learned throughout the podcast that nobody tells you. There's no manual where you look it up on Google. Like you kind of have to learn that on your own. And that's been the main thing that I've taken from the pod. Going back to Oz with the guests. Yeah. Like I said, we don't know anything. Just ask our wives. So, you got to bring people on and just, you learn from their successes and their mistakes, just as we have learned from ours too. I mean, I've learned, trust me, there's a big pile of mistakes sitting off camera here that reminds me every day of, sometimes take it easy. That's the one thing too, that's the one thing, like, the show came to an end for us slowing down, but slowing down, I think helps you prevent making some mistakes when you rush and you're trying to get on the hottest thing. And you jump in too quick. You learn real quick that the prices will eventually come down. Don't buy into that early hype, man. Those hype cycles, they're like potholes in the road, man. Just avoid those at all costs. They'll come back around. Most cards are plentiful. I know there's some outliers, but for instance, a Roberto Clemente rookie, I remember when I got it, I learned that there was millions of those. So why rush? It took me over a year or whatever to pick one up. And even to this day, I'm like, yeah, I probably could have still even waited it out. And trust me, it would be a lot less today than what I paid years ago. But again, the main thing from the pod was just that, man. I've just been, and now it's funny because like when you talk to people who have, or maybe trying to start out on collecting or things like that, things that now I'll tell them, things I had no idea about. And they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. I'm like, yeah, man, think about this, and that, and you'll be okay. But again, nobody's there to hold your hand and tell you that until you kind of fall on your face a little bit and you learn.
Yeah. And the thing, when you're dealing with dealers in particular, they're not gonna they want to make the most amount of money that they can on the deal, so they're not gonna be like, you know what, you seem like a nice kid, let me hook you up. It's every once in a while, but for the most part, they're trying to get their best bang for their buck when it comes to their sales. So they're not gonna go above and beyond for you if you're a newbie. If anything, they'll take advantage of you. I've learned that many times over in this hobby. But John, let me ask you, man, because when we decided to do what we did, and which is, hang up the mics. I mean, first of all, I just want to thank everybody out there that reached out to us. It was overwhelming. It was like last week. It was amazing. And I'm like, damn, did we do the right thing? There's people just reaching out, well, like crazy.
Listen, I got a solution. I don't mean to interrupt you. Uh-huh. I got a possible solution, but go ahead.
Okay. So I was feeling a certain type of way. I'm like, man. And then a lot of people, the main question was, dude, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? Like, what was it? And then a lot of people were like, hey, man, was it the whole Wolfpack thing? Was it, Rob, the sports card therapist? What happened with him? And it had nothing to do with that. That sucked. That whole thing for us, it was crappy. And I still feel bad for what went down. And you know what I mean? I'm hoping that someday he can, come back and do what he has to do. and get better with his stuff. But from the outside looking in, we had our perspective of what it went down. When you're looking from afar and you saw, all the drama that was going on, what was your perspective of it? What were you thinking, when in regards to the Wolfpack and Rob and all that happened at that point in time?
I mean, this is funny. Obviously I have my own thoughts. I'm going to answer you honestly, obviously, because I don't do it any other way. Mm-hmm. If you remember back when that happened, I never brought it up to you guys. Mm-hmm. You guys were closer to Rob, but I was friends with Rob. He invited me to Springfield and do the panel. I just tried to stay out of it and let the chips sort of fall where they may. Listen, if you would have, had you asked me like, hey, what do you think, or what do we do here? I would have, my door was always open. I just didn't want, like, you're dealing with it already. You don't need me to like, hey, you guys, I was under the assumption that if you wanted to talk about it with me, you would open that door. I'm not going to try to walk through it. So I was more or less just staying on the sidelines, hoping for the best outcome. I don't root against people. That's easy to do, and I try not to do that. I'll say this: I'll root for good people. So that's why I invited you to the national onto the main stage, because you guys are good. I felt bad because I knew that's how this hobby works, guys. Right? You're guilty by association, and it's not fair. It's definitely not fair. And so I think people will look at that. It's the same thing if someone from Hobby Hotline does something, and I hope it never happened. I'm going to be guilty by association, even though it might be something that I can't control or have nothing to do with. And that's the unfair part about it. I didn't agree with what was done, but no one was killed here. This is not something you would be charged with and get jail time or probation. It's a bad look. I think it's a character thing more than a criminal thing. And on the same token, I didn't reach out to Rob, and not because same deal here. If he wanted to talk about it, he'd say, John, you saw my video. Did you hear what happened? What should I do? Like, if he wanted my input, he would ask me. I don't know if that's a bad or a good trait I have, but I don't force my way in. My door is open if someone wants me to be in, but I'm just not going to, and I had people, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I had other people not involved in that, non-Wolfpack people say, John, do you see what happened? Blah, 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 and they're just people who like drama. Like, what do you think? And I'm like, listen, man, I don't know what you want me to say. I don't agree with what happened. That's as far as I'll go. I know Rob. I don't think he's an axe murderer. Same thing I just said. But as far as other than that, I'm not going to get that involved unless someone requests that. I'm not going to go there unless I'm invited there, type of deal. And so that was my take. And I don't even think I talked about it on any of my shows. People were making jokes, and this is people's lives, man. I don't know about joking. I'll joke as much as the next guy. You guys know that. I like to have fun. But there's a time and place for those type of moments. And that wasn't the time or the place. So, and I had someone say, you got your friend, you're friends with Tony Nas. Did you talk to him? And I said, no, not about that. You know what I mean? That's their business. If they want to reach that subject, they'll tell me. Hey, John, so that was my stance and point of view. And I think it's easy to pile on, right? I think the hobby likes drama, and they like to, it's like a football pile up. They like to be the 8th or 9th guy on the pile, poking, trying to reach down and poke through a helmet and get an eye. And it's too easy. I'm not going to go there. I knew most of the people involved. I don't know everybody in the Wolfpack. I know you guys can, and Rob and it just wasn't my place to talk about it. It wasn't good. You wish you were talking. There was something else more positive going on, but I just wasn't going to get involved without, whether it be Rob or you guys or whoever, that was involved, or at least directly or indirectly. I got plenty of DMs that said, "Hey, John, what do you think of this? Are you going to talk? Are you going to do?" I had even people say, "Are you going to do a show on this?" And I'm like, "No. If I did, I'd better have Rob or someone on that's than me just turning on the mic and going off on it. When frankly, I don't know all the details. Sure, Rob can give his side, and I'm not saying he wasn't telling the truth." But I just wasn't going to put myself in that mix when it wasn't my place to do it. It's just, and people like that. They want to, when that story happened, I was sad and disappointed because I knew it wasn't going to be good. There was going to be no real good outcome. I also knew, let's be real, that the hobby is forgiving, but sometimes it takes a while. So I knew, the initial, the front part of that was going to be brutal. And as a human, I felt for Rob, and then I felt for everybody in the Wolfpack that was going to be sort of, again, that guilty by association line, which is true. I've seen it. That's not, a lot of the hobby stuff comes from life stuff, and people are like that in life, right? And so, I just wish the best outcome. You wish it never happened first, but that you can't put the genie back in the bottle, as they say. So my take was I was going to just stay on the sidelines until I was asked not to be on the sidelines, until coach said, now you're in, we want to talk about this, and that was my take on it. But I also knew that people were going to be wrongly sort of kind of lumped in there when they had nothing to do with it. And that was, to me, that was even the saddest part. You know what I mean? Like, if I did something, people who are close to me are going to be caught up in that tide pool. And that's the sad part. That's why I try not to try to be a good person in general, but you got to also keep them cognizant of the fact that, what you do, right? It affects your family. It affects your closest friends. And that's the unfortunate, part of what you do is you have to be careful, because it's not just you that's going to be in the middle of it. And so that's my take. I'm not a hateful guy. I haven't talked, full transparency. I haven't talked to Rob. I've given him space. If he wanted to talk to me, he text me or call me. I'm not mad that he hasn't either. I'll say this. If it was me, I don't know how many people I would reach out to, if not all. So I don't take that personally. He's probably got a lot, even now, like many months later, he's probably still feeling some of those repercussions. And listen, someone say, well, John, he brought that. I get it. But I'm not the jury here. The hobby, in a sense, becomes the jury. That might be good, and it might be both bad too. So that's sort of my stance.
Someone's at my door. I've got to get that. Be right back.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.
We are back.
Now, I want to say this pertaining to you guys. When you made that announcement, I didn't think that was the reason. But if it was, I would tell you, no, that's you didn't do anything wrong. We should be responsible for what we do, not for what others do. And I didn't think it was the reason, but I was hoping it wasn't either. You mentioned Oz about people like, hey, like guests are great, but we want to just hear you guys. it's funny hearing you say that, because that's where the show I do, Hobby Quick Hits, which 90% of the time is just me rambling on. It's a shorter show, 20, 25 minutes, rambling on about a topic. It could be it could be a show review. It could be I do a Legends of the Hobby season. It could be anything. It's just me. And that show was born from like, hey, we love the guest, but we want you again. And I didn't do it at first because I'm like, nah, less of me and more guests is the recipe. And I always joke and say that line because I really believe it. I'm like self-depreciating, but I think, we learn more from each other. So regardless of how long you've been in the hobby or not. So that's where Hobby Quick Hits came from. So I get that. So here's my solution that I alluded to earlier. Rather than hang them up, right, maybe do 2 shows in a month, right? Do 1 show with a guest and do like I do it every week. Hobby Quick Hits now with card matches, it's every other week. So, well, what about doing 2 shows a month? 1 you have a guest on, and 1 is just you guys. And then I think it takes a little bit. Excuse me. It takes a little bit. Still a grind. I don't want to like poo-poo it. It's less of a grind, a little less work. It still frees up your schedule to let life more back in. And you still, for people who love Cousins Collectibles, like as I do, and others, you still exist. Not that you don't exist now, but you still exist in coming through speakers. What do you think?
I like it. First things first, getting back to the whole Rob situation. One thing I want to get out there, the Wolfpack was not a conglomerate of shill bidders, doing Rob's bidding to go ahead and, make him money. So that's what it wasn't that. It was just a bunch of, middle-aged men, some younger than others, some older, but we all had a passion for collecting and we all connected. And, we just came together and it just started out as just talking in the DMs, talking to cars, just raw and having fun, cracking jokes. And then it was like, you know what, we should just, let's give ourselves a name. It was just all fun and humor, give ourselves a name. And then we could start doing shows and it kind of, went from there. But what, if anything, when that happened to Rob, the way it affected us and the Wolfpack in general, Rob was kind of like our cheerleader. Like every day, somebody was releasing an episode and first thing in the morning, you get a DM from Rob. Oh, dude, great show. He'd be the first one to listen. He'd get, and it wasn't like bull crap. He'd be like, oh, I like that part where, you talked about this. He would give specifics. So, he was listening. I know he listened at like almost like 2 times speed. So he would get through everybody's stuff real quick, but he would at least, he would give you feedback like immediately every day. And it kind of kept you going. Like when you were uncertain or unsure of what you just put out and you weren't really getting any feedback, Rob was always there to be, like I said, our cheerleader and keep that momentum going. So if anything, that not being there, maybe, has contributed to us, because sometimes, as a podcaster, you don't have some weeks you get a ton of feedback and other weeks you don't get anything. So it's like, am I reaching anybody? Is this just like, are we just doing this? Like I said, we're not getting paid. So why are we really doing this? And, so with Rob being there and really, being our backbone, that kind of, now that I think about it, that might have contributed to where we kind of, after that, like slowed down a little bit. But the funny thing is, you're talking about coming back and doing this, but our biggest detractor, or at least my biggest detractor, was my wife when it came to this thing. Cause I took time away from my family and from her. And, when I finally told her, hey, you know what, we're hanging up the mics. She was so upset. She was disappointed. She's like, what are you talking about? Are you serious? After all this time, doing this crap, now you want to give it up, And I was like, well, yeah, I thought you'd be happy. She's like, no, that's your thing. That's you and Tony's thing. Why are you going to give it up? Do something. You could talk about anything. So I'm sure, what I mean? It's funny. Like I said, after hearing from everybody and now you saying what we could do to try to keep it going, at least my biggest detractor.
Here's the thing. You can set the schedule, whether that was just one thing I threw out there, do 2 shows a month, 1 guest, 1 just you guys, right? You maybe, you determine, hey, we'll go every other month. This month we have a guest. Next month that's the beauty of podcasting is you determine that. For me, Hobby Quick Hits was every week, and then me and Danny did that show Card Matches, and it people liked it, and I said, hey, we'll just go every other week, and the week is no card matches. There's Hobby Quick Hits. There's Hobby Quick Hits. There's no card matches, and I'll share this. I haven't really shared this publicly, and Danny had asked me, like, what about card matches every week? And I'm like, no, I love you. I love you, Danny. I do. But it's too much. Like the bloom will come. The bloom might come off the rose anyway, but that will just make it happen sooner. I think one of the reasons, I think we're funny. We're both ugly looking guys. So I think it makes people, hey, I'm not that bad. Look at these two guys. But I think the fact that we're every other week, it gives someone like they miss it the week it's not there. And then they look forward to it. Hey, it's coming back. If we were every week, it's sort of, these two guys again, So that's my take on it. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. There's probably some truth in there. So you can set your own schedule, like any podcaster does. Like, hey, this show's on Tuesday. This show's on Friday. This show is going to be every other Monday, or however you want to do it. That way, life can still obviously happen. You can enjoy it. You can keep wives and kids. You're not in their doghouse as well. And it's funny hearing you say how your wife kind of was like, hey, what, because that's a supportive wife, right? That's a wife that knows that how important it is to you, right? My wife doesn't listen to the show. She doesn't know anything about cards, right? But she's supportive in the fact that I get to do it, and she allows me. I don't want to say allows me like I'm, she's the warden and I can go out and play in the yard and shoot some hoops before I got to get back in myself. But she's supportive, and she's never like stopped me. And I've talked about this before. We have like a dry erase counter that's downstairs, and the only thing she asks is like anything you, whether it be a card show or you're traveling or you're doing an interview, just put it on the counter so I know that's what you're doing that day. I won't schedule anything that's with you, and since I've done that, which has been a couple years now, it's even been smoother sailing. So it's the old line, right? Communication is probably one of the most important things. But again, from a selfish point of view, guys, I'd love to see you still do what you do. There's a reason I invited you on the main stage at an early point. You're pretty new, but I saw that you guys kept it real. You were having fun, and I think a lot of people feel that way. I'm not, what's the guy's name that discovers all the boy band guys? I forget it, but I think people see when they see something, when someone's genuine. Who was that?
Simon Cowell.
There's the other guy, the heavier set guy with the
the guy that he found in Sync and Backstreet Boys and was like molesting everybody. That guy.
yeah, but not that part. But I didn't even know about that part. But
yeah.
But,
that's a big story. Yeah,
I think you can you can adjust your schedule rather than completely go cold turkey. I mean, but again, that's your decision. I'm not, that's just someone who enjoys the show throwing a potential, think about this type of deal out there.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to the powers that be. But like Oz's wife needs a show like Batman needs a Joker, to something like that. But John, I want to ask you, this, heaven forbid we actually talk about cards, because there's two things that are grinding my gears that I want to ask you in the millions of hobby hotline. Look at that, man. The sports card nation out there. So the first thing is I saw the new Topps releases out, and I think they have 30 or 31 parallels. They show Bryce Harper, and it's all this stuff, and I'm like, this is too much for me. Like, that's just 31 parallels, and I mean, I don't know, man. Like, the hobby is just like, they just keep hitting us over the head with a hammer. We're just like, yeah, just give me, like, we're like the, the mole game where at the,
Yeah, whack-a-mole.
yeah, man. And I'm like, come on, man. Like that is crazy. So one is just your take on that. And the other one too is Oz always talks about these hobby cycles where it's like, is it really that predictable? Like, you buy it this season and then you sell it that season and then just repeat and, all the time. And I'm like, who are these people that keep buying this stuff? And why is it so predictable? I mean, like I said, like right now, everybody's buying these little quarterbacks and they hide them. And then come July, they selling them off and people buy them and then they get stuck with them. And then they come back again the next year and do it again. Like, it's just, I don't know, man. Like, why? Like, I don't know. Maybe is there any, I don't even think of there's a show out there educating. And I mean, again, not everybody listens to podcasts, but just like breaking these hobby cycles and being a little bit more educated. Cause I mean, I just, more often than not, they're pretty much impulsive buys in my opinion and uninformed buys. Cause I mean, you're buying at the peak of the hype and there's nothing that those players are going to be able to do to make those cards, 2, 3, 4x. I mean, let's look at Patrick Mahomes now. The guy's won, tons of Super Bowls, but are his cards selling more expensive now than they were when the first hype cycle came around? Probably not. I don't know, but just why do we keep seeing this over and over and over again? And there's no end in sight.
So the answer to your first question, it's why I don't open a lot of new wax anymore, quite frankly, Tony. I do have a tradition. I open up at least one box of flagship just because I've done it for 40 years. It's like, it's a hard habit to break.
What's that at now, John? What's a hobby box at for that
about
stuff?
$100-$120 at the moment. Okay. But you break a great point. Those presses are probably still running. I can't remember what the number was, but I saw what they were announced sort of. I don't know where it came from, but how many cases and boxes were being produced. And it's mind-numbing. It's mind-numbing. I thought, please, how many trees is that? The old man that cares a little bit more about stuff like that. There's going to be no shortage of it. You mentioned 31 different parallels and might even be more now. They might have added one that's going to be in retail. I open a box because I've done it since 1980. That's it. Not that I think it's going to, I'm going to make a mint off it. The box I opened this year, I actually did well on. I kind of posted a couple of those cards. 9 times out of 10, let's be real, not the case. This was that 1 time out of 10. Next year, in 2025, God willing, I'm still here. I'll probably be like, hey, look at my Greg Jeffries retro fractor. That's $8. That was my biggest hit, out of the box. So I don't open it necessarily for the financial aspect. It's just the nostalgia aspect. There is a method to the madness as far as I would tell you this. If I'm buying football guys that I think are poised to have better years or continue on a trend, I'll buy it after the season's over when the hype is died down. To buy during the hype is just you're gonna cost yourself money, and why should you do that? You mentioned Mahomes. It's a good point. He hasn't really seen a huge jump, especially winning the Super Bowl. But he's a guy I love because I think when his career's over, barring like a catastrophic injury, there's going to be, we talk about Brady, Montana, it's going to be Mahomes and Brady conversation. I think you can already start making that case, guys, as crazy as that sounds in his eighth year of playing. So he's got, 8 to 10 more years, but even maybe another year or two there, he's going to win. I'd be shocked if he don't win another 1 or 2 rings. And so he's going to be in that conversation. So he's a guy I look at, and if there's a deal or something I think's too low, I'll buy it. I'll kind of put it away. I won't even put it out in my show inventory. Like I have Mahomes out in my cases, but not everyone that I own to be, transparent about it. So there's strategy. I mean, but stuff can go off script too. As much as we can, when the pandemic was about to hit, I was on this show saying, hey, cards are going to take a back seat. Life is going to go, and look how wrong I was. And that was with 30 something years at the time, talking. So, just when it's like the old MTV from the real world. You think you know, but you don't know, right? It's that for the hobby. And I always say that when I'm like, hey, I think this, but let's see. You know what I mean? And one of my favorite things I hear from podcasters is, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, but maybe there's a little bit of that in it. When I hear, but in my 3 years since I've been in the hobby, I figured it all out. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm 40 years and I haven't figured it all out. You did it in 3? You're like the Mensa guy of the hobby, So it's no one has the complete combination, but you do it long enough, you see certain things, right? So there's my answer to that. And buying in the off season, that's not rocket science. I didn't have to pull up analytics and charts and do a college research paper on it. That's just more common sense, right? You buy, it's supply and demand. You buy stuff when it's less in demand, and then you sell it when it's more in demand, if you're a seller, right? That's just economics 101.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like I said, we just see these same cycles. I know odds. It's like, man, is it really that predictable? I'm like, yeah, it is.
Oh, by the way,
it is, but every once in a while, something throws you a curveball. Like, holy smokes,
there's an outlier. But I figured out the guy. It's Lou Pearlman.
Lou Pearlman, that's it. The one guy, I will say this, I'm better looking than he. I don't know if he's even still alive. So I hope
he passed away in 2016.
Okay, so I'm definitely better looking at the moment, but but going back to that, it's just my point is, I saw very early on, and not that I'm propping it, but that who you guys were, what you were about, and I said what I try to do with that main stage, even after guys I've had on even after you guys, is have people who love the hobby, passionate about it, and put some shine on them. And I'm fortunate that I get to do that, right? I'm blessed in that respect. So that's why that, I know you thank me, but that's why I do it. And, thank yourselves for being those folks. And that's why we don't want you to really go away. Maybe come back and schedule, and, 1 or 2 shows a month instead of 4 to 6. And, it is. I get it though, man. I get the grind. Recently, in the last couple of years, I've learned some editing tricks and stuff to really sort of save me some time. And I figured it out. I think I posted this some months back. I think I did. I spend about, and this includes card shows, an average about 90 minutes a day in the hobby. And that's not just contact creating, just in the hobby combined. One day might be 3 hours and the next day might be 0. So that's where the hour and a half comes in. And when you break that down, I think it's 8% of my life is hobby. And most people would, full disclosure, most people said, hey, how much of John's life is hobby? Most people are going to guess more than 8%. And I get it. I don't take that personal or get mad. I understand why they would think that when you're doing 3 or 4 shows and you're setting up at shows and all that. I get where they would think, but it's really at the end of it, in accuracy, it's around 8 to 10. I'll do the hyphen. It's around 8 to 10%. If I have a show that week, we'll make it a 10% of my life. And I've just learned, I don't want to say tricks. I've just learned techniques and different things to, I use Audacity as an editor for content. I downloaded it and I didn't read instructions. I like the mail, I don't need instructions. I got this, right? But the editing process was taking me a long time. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go on YouTube. You can, we all know it, right? You can find out anything on YouTube. So I'm like, Audacity tutorial. And it was a 20-minute video. and I watched it. I sat there and watched it. I took some notes. And watching that 20-minute video saved me, I'm not making this up, 3 hours each week right there. So the 20-minute one-time investment in my notes led to 2 or 3 more hours a week. And that number getting low, that percentage of the life number getting lower. And even some of my posts, I've been very transparent about some of the posts that I post are scheduled. I use a thing called buffer. So I load the post in and I say, every Monday at 10 o'clock, run, hey, catch the hobby release schedule on Hobby Quick Hits, right? I'm not doing that every week. I'm doing that one time and automating it. And someone said, oh, man, that's lazy. No, I think that's kind of smart. I'm still doing it, but rather than doing it 10 times, I'm doing it once and making it go 10 times. Mm-hmm. So, different things like that have helped me time-wise. And if I didn't figure those things out or learn about those things, Tony and Oz, I might be like, man, this, I got to cut down or I got to stop. And I'm glad I found, I talked about this on my show. And we're in the 270s now for this show episode. When I was in the 40s and 50s, it was becoming an issue. I came down from up here one day, and my wife said, "Who are you?" And I'm like, looked at her. She goes, "Oh, it's nice to see you. How long are you going to be down for?" And then it really hit home. Like, I'm spending too much time. And when you're in it, sometimes you need someone else like to do that. And she did it in a sort of funny, sarcastic way, but the message still was received, right? I got to figure out a better schedule so it's not as time consuming. And I tweaked some stuff even then. And then we added that dry erase board schedule. I learned Audacity better, buffering to kind of do automated posting and different things like that. And I always say, if anyone ever has questions, I'll be more than happy to share that stuff. It's not a secret. These are, Buffer is a major app. It's not like I invented it and I'm using it only, someone else told me about it. That's how I found out. So different things like that can free up your schedule, and then just yourself, right? Say, hey, this is what I'm going to spend today, and stick to that, right? I'm a list guy, like a to-do list guy. So here's my today's one, so I cross it off and I'm done. And then I set like in a lot of time. If I don't finish, I obviously do the more pertinent stuff first. And then if I don't finish, we'll get to it tomorrow. That's just what works for me. Everyone's got a different technique. It's not my way's right and your way's wrong. And my way's right for me. It may not be right for someone else, and vice versa. So that's always sort of been how I balance stuff out. And life's important, guys. You got kids, your dad, your husbands, as am I. I always joke, when we're not here anymore, right? There's going to be nothing on my headstone that says pretty good podcaster, right? If anything, I hope it says beloved dad, husband, brother, whatever. And that, someone asked me, do you have any pet peeve, hobby or content pet peeves? And I guess it's people who think like, I'm not a celebrity. I might be a hobby celebrity. I didn't even think that, but I've been called that. But I'm not a celebrity. Like I go to my shop. You're not a celebrity till you go to your supermarket and someone says, "Oh my God, it's you!" Like, okay, what do you do? Like, you know what I mean? So, and people may know me in the hobby, but I think there are people who think like they're legit known, like past the hobby when they're not even. And that, I don't want to say it bothers me, but I always get a chuckle out of it and think that's just goofy stuff. Like that's more about, doesn't affect me. So why should, you know what I mean? I'm not going to lose sleep about it, but I always think it's kind of funny, and, if I'm on a show and the host like says, "Hey, hobby expert," I always like say, I'm not an expert. I'm experienced. And I know the words are similar, experience, expert. I'm not an expert, but I just have a lot of experience. So, that's just my soapbox that I'm, and I'll get down off it right now. But
yeah,
so.
Listen, I hear all that, but you have obviously never walked through a crowd with Cousin Oz, the people's mailman, and we have to have like a circle around, at least a 5-foot circle in diameter to keep all the people away, because they all just want to get at the mailman. So
just get a piece. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what they say, the mailman delivers, right?
There you go.
Yeah, man.
There you go.
And listen, I get it. I told the story. I was online once for the Topps Q&A, and I was talking to Logan and Val Mars. You guys, who they are, and I was talking to them, and the guy tapped me on the shoulder. I'll tell the story real quick because I've told it numerous times. I turned around, and the guy said, "Hey, are you John Newman?" And my humor, I'm like, "Well, you're not with your FBI, are you?" He goes, "No." And I go, "I am." He goes, "Oh, I recognize your voice, man. I love your show. I listen to it all the time. I never seen you. I don't know what you look like till just now." So I asked to, and I was completely taken aback, holy crap, someone recognized. It's one thing if you recognize my ugly face. It's not like it, but literally my voice, which I actually don't like my own voice. I think a lot of people would say that. But to think someone standing in line who doesn't know what I look like just by voice, I'm like, that was insane. I'm not gonna lie, it made my day. That's crazy to me. And you don't know. And here's the other thing I'll say with podcasting, and I don't want, I blow this up big, but you don't realize the impact you have. I did 2 shows with my dad, which weren't actually my most downloaded episodes, but they were the most feedback episodes. Hey, and again, I'll make this story very short. It's I had people reach out that had estranged relationships with their father, some double-digit years, some 3-4 years. It said, after hearing that episode, John, I'm calling my dad up today, even though he's wrong and I was right, at least in their minds. I'm going to blink first. He's getting older. I don't know how much longer he's going to be around. It's stupid. Whatever it is, we're mad at each other for. It's dumb. Your episode made me realize that. When I did those episodes, I just want to talk about the Brooklyn Dodgers and Evans Field and Jackie Robinson and Duke Schneider and Roy Campanella. I had no idea that was going to come of it. That was a cherry on top of that. And what it taught me, those particular episodes, is you never know what kind of impact your conversations may have. And it doesn't have to be repairing a family relationship. It can be teaching someone something in the hobby, or saving somebody some money with some advice, right? And we can't belittle those things. We really we don't have to pat ourselves on the back necessarily, but we need to recognize that that's the kind of impact we can have. And sometimes, in my case, by accident with those episodes with my dad. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that's what I was going for. I wasn't thinking anything along those lines. I'm glad that it happened, and that's a nice life thing about it. But that wasn't what I was thinking, or my dad for that matter. We're just talking about Brooklyn and the Dodgers and cards back in the day. But from that birthed something else that was a good thing. And so I always tell any podcasters, and I remind myself, right, that kind of stuff can come of it. And so when you stop doing that, right, you sort of lose that. You don't lose it. It's forever in the archives. Anyone can go back and listen to a Cousins Collect whatever episode they want to. But I think, again, I'm going to try to talk you back out of retirement, right? Is you can set your own schedule. If you need to cut back, people understand that. I sure will, as someone who does this every week, right? So just something to chew on, and that I'll throw out there.
Yeah, and I know we're going to be wrapping up soon, but I did want to say, yeah, you kind of touched on something there. I know a lot of people, they listen to the hobby podcast to get either, like you said, numbers or ideas about cars, or listen to what the hottest card is out there, or things like that. But we've had some episodes where it's like bridging either gaps. I mean, I think there's like a 2 or 3 week run there where if you go back and if nobody's heard these episodes before, you hear Oz, his daughter is a big Stranger Things fan. And so they go and they go to Florida and they see Millie Bobby Brown. And like in the time when we're in it, we're just talking. And I'm thinking like now that you're talking about, where you had the episode with your father, I'm like, there might have been a parent out there who maybe has a kind of a strained relationship with their kid or whoever it is. And you hear Oz and I'm not speaking out of, he can tell you like his daughter deals with a little bit of social anxiety. She's shy, things like that. And he talks about it. And, we're making jokes along the way as he's telling these stories. But if not for the podcast, if not for the hobby, we don't have that conversation. And just the other day, he was talking about how they were out in Penn State and they're having a 3-hour conversation on the way home. So, and you don't think about that stuff when you're sitting down and you're outlining your show, but these conversations go that way. And sometimes that's those are like evergreen episodes to me. Yeah. The thing could be over and done with, that Millie Bobby Brown autograph signing, but it's not about that as much as it is, it's taking her, she's stepping out of her comfort zone and things like that. And that would never have been a topic episode. I mean, we used to line our things out, so it would have never, but it transformed into that. And then you can just, listen to it, put your own spin on it, whatever it is you got going on. And so those, like, there's a couple in there that are like that, man, where we talk about, we start out on cards and it turns into something else. And so I will be proud of some like episodes like that kind of like those evergreen ones.
Yeah, that definitely,
that stuff's important. Yeah, go ahead.
It is. And there was plenty of girl dads out there that reached out to me and, they're doing the same thing or they would like to, their relationship with their daughter is estranged and they're, asking me, advice on how to try to, and it's all about just finding a common ground and really building upon that. And then from there, communicating, keeping that constant communication is the key, whether it's, daughter, son, wife. I always joke about my wife and her being my biggest detractor, but I'm that's my baby girl. I'd be nothing without her. And, she's been, she really has been my biggest supporter. So I love her dearly. And she knows, she said it early on, if I got to be the bad guy in the podcast, I'll be the bad guy. So you guys can get ratings. That's cool.
No, and that stuff's important. I talk about my personal life on the show, not at length. I don't want to bore people, but I think sometimes people forget, like, we're more than just card collectors, right? We are dads and husbands and brothers and humans, right? We're not just robots who collect, Randall Cunningham and Jackie Robinson and Stranger Things stuff. We're more, that's just part of what we do, but it's not the whole picture. And so I make a point to share some of the life, even going back to my dad, the first time when I put him on, I even almost didn't do it because I'm like, oh, people are going to say, oh, John's putting his dad on the show, like nepotism, right? But then I thought, how many times am I going to get to talk? Forget that he's my father. How many times can I have someone on the show that went to Ebbets Field, who met Jackie Robinson and the other Brooklyn Dodgers, had conversations with him, saw him play? I don't care what their name is, Barry Newman or Mike Danello, whoever, right? It didn't matter that it was my dad. He lived that experience. I wanted to have him on to share those with not just me, who was in. I knew other people would enjoy it. So I got over that. Hey, you're gonna take heat because you're putting your dad on. It happened to be my dad, but he had a story to tell. And so I think, we got, it's nice to care about what people think, but at the end of the day, right, we got to try to put the best content out there that we can. Sometimes I'm better at it than other times. I'm not going to sit here and tell you like, every episode is like that. It's like at bats in baseball. Sometimes you get in the box and hit a home run. Sometimes you get in the box and you take a called strike 3 or you line one out to second base. That's the beauty of it, right? You appreciate those great shows. The feeling when you've wrapped up the show and like, man, that was fun. And that was, and hopefully today's one of those days. But we've all been there. We get that, and so it shows you care too, that you whether you feel that way or not. And there's probably other people who could care less, and they don't even assess how they did or whatnot. But that's on them. But again, I appreciate you. Whether you come back or not, I hope you come back. I've told you I've given my proposal. I put that on the thing. But, what you did for the 2 years has been incredible. It speaks for itself. It's there for everybody who hasn't heard it to go back. It's Eric from those back pages, he came on and he said, doing content, whether it be video, audio, both, you're leaving a legacy, right? Even when we're not here no more, maybe your grandson or your great-grandson or great-granddaughter who never got to meet you potentially, it gets to them that, hey, your great-grandpa and your cousin, they did a podcast back in the 2020s, right? And they can go back and listen to that. And so they never met you, but they can learn about you through the audio. And that's what Eric from those back pages meant by leave a legacy. When he first said it, I thought, man, that's sort of dramatic, like a legacy. I'm not like Morgan Freeman, like that's a legacy. An actor, you can go watch movies, you can even watch movies from the 1920s if you want. But he was right when you really think about it, right? Have you ever I thought about like family that you may never meet in the future, right? Can find out about you through Cousins Collectibles. How crazy is that when you really think about it?
Yeah, I always tell my older daughter, she never listens. I said, when I'm long gone, you can go back when you're missing daddy. And, you talk a lot of crap now, you're big and bold, but I said, you're going to miss me one day. I said, you could always go back and listen to my podcast, finally.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And that's the beauty of it, right? And I know sometimes I realize it and sometimes I take it for granted, right? You don't think about it. So, but it's true. And there's going to be a lot of that, in the archives for people, and not just family, right? There'll be hobbyists in the future that find our shows, right? When we're not doing them anymore for whatever reason, we're not here or we stopped. And they can still learn stuff for, like you said, evergreen. And so you don't realize sort of that impact. And I look at some of the demographic reports that I get, and it's interesting to see people go back and listen to old shows of Sports Card Nation. I'm like, wow, man, that's old. But it's also inspires me, like, people like it enough to do that. I should probably keep going. I guess when I stop seeing that, maybe that's like, all right, you're done. And I'll join you guys in retirement. We'll meet in West Palm Beach. But all joking aside, again, I hope to see you continue in some form or fashion. I don't have to say this, but I will. I'm always here if you need any sort of. Again, I'm not an expert, but if you need, you want to bounce an idea, or hey, what's your take on this, or what do you think of that, or how would you do this? That my door is always open. I don't take offense if you don't ask, but I'm here if you do as well, guys. And with that, I don't care. We went long. I'm not watching the clock. As long as you guys are not in trouble and I didn't get you in trouble. But speaking of finding like your stuff, whether you're doing it currently or not, where people give out, how we do this, give out anything you guys want to share here.
Sure. One thing that absolutely does not stop is the collecting. Like, that's still going on. It's just, like I said, the content creation just, on pause for a while. We'll see. Maybe we'll talk to the powers that be and see how it all works out. But the collecting still continues.
Yeah.
That definitely doesn't stop. But yeah, so you can just Google or podcast, whatever, search the Cousins Collectibles podcast. And, if you start from the beginning, we set the bar really low, and then kind of got production value got a little bit better as it goes along. We had one guy who was listening the other way around from the latest to the earliest. I'm like, nah, it's going to get progressively worse. So just start at the beginning, the bar set really low, and then, you can work your way on up from there. So, the Cousins Collectibles podcast on Instagram as well. Cousin Oz is at Cousin Oz, the people's mailman on Instagram. You can see our collections there, and you can see the growth from when we were little hobby babies to now we're like hobby kids. We still got a long way to go yet. That journey never ends. Like I said, the collecting continues. And again, John, a big thank you to you for putting us on early and riding with us. So we appreciate that. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, we'll see where it goes from here. But the collecting does not stop.
Yeah, it's goodbye for now. So we shall see what the future holds for us, and you'll always be our Lou Pearlman. That's how I'm going to end it.
Well, I think I appreciate that.
Minus all the crazy crap. Yeah.
Well, guys, listen, I appreciate everything, and I know you thank me, but that's a mutual admiration club. And again, from a selfish point of view, and I think I speak for many others, I hope to see you on the airwaves soon. Like you said, you're not getting out of collecting, so I know I'll see you what you picked up and that sort of thing. And it's funny, someone asked me this, and I don't want to make this show. I'll make this quick. How one of the questions I had was like, how has your hobby changed doing podcasting? For me, I'll answer sort of my own question. For me, I this is going to sound crazy to some, but I actually buy less cards, and it's just because I'm less on eBay and other selling marketplaces and auction sites because of content creation. And don't get me wrong, I'm still purchasing cards. I'm not, but I think I purchased more before I did content creation than during it. And I'm not complaining or saying that that's a necessarily bad thing. That's a trend I've noticed, and people are surprised when I give them that's the answer, but it's actually true.
It's your hobby fix. It's how you get your hobby fix, whether it's through the content creation or stuff like that. Which, by the way, I need some more Randall Cunningham game use stuff. So if anybody out there has some, slide into the DMs at Cousins_collectibles. I lost an auction the other day and was trying to.
How about Donovan McNabb, Syracuse's own?
Yeah, I had a bunch. Actually, I had a whole McNabb collection, and I sold it to get. Ended up buying Clemente stuff with it. So I did have that. Dude, that was one of my first jerseys. Listen, real quick, one of my first jerseys as a kid was a Donovan McNabb Syracuse jersey that I bought way back. So I was on that train, man, before. And once they drafted him, I'm like, oh, this guy's good. And then some things went awry, but.
He got booed, though. He got booed at the draft. Like, that was...
Yeah, because the fans are idiots. That's a story for another... That's another podcast.
We'll have to do like a Philly flavor episode, and we'll incorporate McNabb and the Syracuse ties in there as well. I'm a McNabb guy, being here in Syracuse. I got to watch him play obviously at home in the dome, so I saw what he was capable of. Fell short of a ring, but still had a pretty good career. So but guys, I appreciate it. We'll have to do it again. We could probably do 3 hours. Maybe we'll just start a new show with us three.
Listen, you tee it up and we just show up.
Blue Pearls.
If you do the honors, your catchphrase kind of will go out with your. I'll let you do it.
Oh, it's first of all, thank you so much for having us, and we're gonna end this like we always do, and that is keep focused, keep positive, and keep collecting. Hey, yo, John, bring the beat back.
There you go. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
All right, it was good having Tony and Oz back on the program. It's been a long time, or been a while, but glad to have them back, and I'm hoping their hiatus from the podcasting of their own show is a short one, and they unpause it, but I get it. People don't realize there's a grind involved, and like they said, they're true to their passion, right? If you're not feeling something, they decided they're not going to go through the motions. I've said that with what I do here as well, and I just think, I guess, working towards our 6th year, I guess I'm just sort of locked in. I don't have any young kids. I think that helps me. But I've been doing a lot more card shows lately, and then it becomes a little more trickier to balance it all out. So I fully understand where they're coming from, but hope they come back, though, from a selfish point of view. I'm sure many others share the same sentiment. So with that being said, I wish them luck. I'll keep in contact with them. Like they said, they're not leaving the hobby. They're not getting rid of everything they own and exiting stage left in that fashion. So that part is good. So they're still part of this great hobby, and happy to call them friends. And hopefully, I'll have them back on again, and maybe we'll be talking about their podcast again. All right, time to hear from our Hobby is the People announcer. Hey, if you want to be part of the show, listen to what you're about to hear. It tells you how to send your sound file to us, and you can be part of the show as well. So let's get to that. Some closing thoughts, and we'll wrap up the show for this week.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
This is Card Killer. Remember, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
That's a wrap for this week. Huge thanks to you, the listeners out there, because without you, there is no us. If you like the show, we truly appreciate positive reviews. Big ups to our great guests who drive the show and our awesome sponsors who make it all possible. Sports Card Nation will be back next week, but don't forget to catch either Hobby Quick Hits or Card Mentions coming up on Monday. I'll leave you with this. How do we change the world? One random act of kindness at a time. Remember, the hobby is the people.
Hobby News Daily is your homepage of the hobby, providing original writing, exclusive gem rate data, a daily morning minute podcast, and some of the best content creators in the hobby. Remember, hobbynewsdaily.com and @hobbynewsdaily on social. Happy collecting!
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.